Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Door 14 Hockey Podcast. I'm your host Marty alongside John
Hello.
and Aaron.
Hey.
As we all aware, on Saturday, 20th of October 2023, a freak accident occurred during the Sheffield Steelers and the Nottingham Panthers game, resulting in the death of Nottingham's number 47, Adam Johnson. It goes without saying that our love, well wishes, and condolences go out to Adam's family, friends, teammates, old and new, and those who have coached, managed, and supported Adam through his career. We also keep you, the fans of both teams, in our thoughts, and especially those who were in attendance on the night, as you come to terms with what you witnessed on the ice. I'm sure that's playing out in your heads, and hopefully you can get through this through talking. Not forgetting a special mention as well to all the players, officials, first responders, off-duty healthcare workers who tried their best to care and save Adam's life on and off the ice that night. We can only imagine it must have been a panicked and frantic situation. In the days that follows, we have seen a hockey community rally around to support each other, ensuring that those needing support were looked after, while the news and the media in the UK have talked about how our sport of ice hockey that we love and here in the UK is a minority sport. The outpouring of support that has come from far and wide, right across from North American leagues, the European leagues, all hockey fans have been affected by this incident. And it kind of gives us a reassurance that although the UK have deemed it as a minority sport, we didn't feel like we were in a minority, given the number of people who reached out and talked about what was happening. It'd be remiss of us not to address the dark undercurrent that has infiltrated our hockey community. Targeted hate and uneducated comments are rife on social media. We want to make it clear that we at Door 14 Hockey stand shoulder to shoulder with the heart and soul of the hockey community in affirming our support for Matt Petgrave. We stand with you, Matt. We know our community will heal. These were sentiments that were spoken by Kevin Moore, the assistant coach of the Nottingham Panthers, the day after Adam's passing, as he addressed the gathered fans in Bolero Square in Nottingham. The healing has begun in some ways for teams and leagues across the world. Each of them have been paying their own tribute in their own way, marking Adam's life and career from his beginnings in Minnesota, his stint in the NHL with the Pittsburgh Penguins, his time spent in the AHL with the Scranton Penguins, Ontario Reign, Lee Valley Phantoms, and as well as his time in Europe with the Malmo Redhawks, Augsburg Panthers, and in his final team, the Nottingham Panthers. As a team ourselves, we've chatted over the last week and a half to decide what would be the best and most appropriate thing to do for our first episode back following the incident. As any regular listener who will know the structure and topical nature of our show, we felt it wasn't right to slot Adam in as a news piece, if you will, in one of our period pieces. So instead, we thought we wanted to have a standalone episode that wouldn't focus necessarily on the events and what happened on that night on the ice. Other podcasts have done that and have done that fantastically. But instead, we wanted to look at the tributes that have poured out across the globe. And as well as that, we wanted to have a quick look as well at the response that has followed in relation to player safety. We hope that nothing in this week's episode will trigger anyone. But if it does impact you, or you feel that you do need help, we will leave helpful numbers in the links for this podcast, as well as in the description for our YouTube video. Guys, it's been a surreal almost 2 weeks now. First off, just checking in with you guys. How you doing? I know for myself, when it all took place on that fateful night, that Saturday night, I know that I was on Twitter as normal, following the Belfast Giants game, checking the scores as I normally would do, and started seeing messages coming in of an incident that took place in Nottingham. And I think probably like a lot of the fans across the league, not just the fans from Nottingham and Sheffield, I think all fans started to kind of look on to see what's happening, try and get a sense of what's going on in terms of what took place. John, come to you first. I mean, I'm sure you're probably the same. How did you find? I mean, what was your initial thoughts after the incident, and what has happened so far after going forward in the days that followed? Has he muted himself? Yeah, we'll mute him.
That shows you. On mute there. Yeah, sorry, it was a strange one. I was down in England with my wife's family. We were all together, all the siblings were together for the first time in a few weeks, and really, hockey for the first time in a while was as far away in my mind as it could be in the middle of the season. And it was only whenever we started messaging between us that something had happened during this game. And instantly you start trying to follow the news, like you said, Marty. You're hooked, and you're hoping for the best. And that was the overriding feeling through that entire night and the next morning until the Panthers made the announcement that unfortunately he passed away. Um, and yeah, it's been a weird. It was a weird few days. The league rightfully paused, um, and we're going to come to talk about what happened when the league came back. But I made a point of going back to a local game here. I thought it was important, and I said it on my own Twitter that I thought it was important that hockey fans stand together, because, like you said, we've seen the best out of this community over the last 2 weeks, as well as seeing potentially the worst. But the best has shone brighter than what the worst has been dark.
I would tend to agree with you. I think the outpouring has been phenomenal from right across old rivalries, as we will, as you would see normally happening, and the usual jabs and jibes just weren't happening. And it did show the united. And I did mention it in the intro. You do feel that sometimes when we talk about the fact that that it's brushed as a minority sport, that as I mentioned, it didn't feel that way in that point. It just felt like everybody kind of coming together, and you kind of felt it, especially when you had the likes of players and fans from right across the world, all commenting and putting out, reaching out as well. Aaron, coming to you. I mean, obviously the instant, when did you first? Was it from whenever we were started chatting in our group, or
Yeah.
how did?
So very similar to John. I was with family. I had my nephews over. We were having a pizza party, and then I wasn't paying attention to Twitter, and then I started getting messages from yourself and John and Dave about this particular incident, and it was just there's no words really to try to even explain it. And as John said, you were just hoping for the best, and immediately when I heard about it, of course, there was the fear for Adam, and but there was also the likes of what happened to Evander Kane last year. There was that hope that okay, potentially it, it's going to be okay, but unfortunately, as you say, we were waiting until the next morning, and then that's when they announced. And we were all messaging at the same time. We were. I remember where I was. I remember being in the sunroom, messaging back and forth, and we were talking about what had happened. It's just
it was definitely one of those instances. There's times it's funny how there's times in your life where people that you don't know, and I won't say celebrities because well, celebrities, you could call it celebrities if you want, because obviously sports people kind of some people hold them up like they would hold up a celebrity, and there is times in your life where certain things happen, and even though you didn't know the person, you have this you almost get this weird sense of like loss, and in a way that's kind of like, I don't know this person personally. I've never met Adam, but it really did affect me the next day, and I really did feel. And I suppose for quite a lot of fans, and I'm sure fans who are listening to this or watching this now live, I mean, I'm sure you probably identify with this. I'm in the minority sport of ice hockey, but it's well known that I'm in that minority sport of ice hockey. It's well known that I'm a big fan of ice hockey in my place of work. So to go in to work on Monday morning and have every single person who normally would never really ask me about, oh, how did Giants go this weekend or how was hockey this weekend, to have every single person that basically see me on Monday ask me if I had seen what had happened, it was a surreal thing even in and of itself. And then recounting and getting them asking me what my opinion was on it and my thoughts on it. And I work, I suppose, within the medical profession as well. So working alongside doctors and nurses who had their opinions on what happened and then asking me what my thoughts were on it, and we're having a conversation in relation to that, it was a surreal moment. But as well as that, like, I work with different doctors and stuff every single day, so they change me every day. So I felt like I was having the same conversation for a full week because I was seeing like 3 new people every single day asking the same question. John, I know you maybe had a similar experience as well in work. Whenever you went in, it was kind of a bit of a question around, did you see it? And
Yeah, a little bit. It's been a little bit. It's not the way that you want people to come to our sport. I've been quite lucky in that respect that I've only really been in the office once or twice since everything. And yeah, the first day was the entire morning was that the procession of people through the office, asking the questions. What about this? What about that? And because it was only a couple of days after, like I was in a quite a strange place, really similar to what you said, Marty, like feeling very unsure about how I felt about everything. I didn't know Adam at all. I didn't know him personally, but you're right, that feeling of loss was there, I think, for almost everyone. And family knew it on the next morning. I, among a lot of other fans, I'm sure, was stuck to my phone looking for news, and I think it must have been really, really clear that I wasn't in a really good headspace. Sort of seeing all the news come through, and to have that then happen again with having to not recount the story, but recount how I felt, and then have to go into hockey explainer mode a little bit. Just it wasn't the time that you wanted to be doing that.
Yeah, no, and I get it, and as I mentioned in our intro, we want to make sure that this episode is around a tribute, and we want to talk about the tributes that have poured it since then. I mentioned the first thing that I mentioned in my intro as well, that we had the Nottingham Panthers join the fans in Bolero Square the day after, almost like a comfort factor. But from that point forward, I'm just going to share, if it's okay, guys, I'm going to jump into the tributes now as we're talking. And we'll have a bit of a chat around them. But as we know, Bolero Square, if anybody has never been to Nottingham or doesn't understand the geography of Nottingham, outside the Motorsport Arena is a large, we've been there for playoffs, a large area just towards the main entrance, which is obviously known as Bolero Square. And it became a tribute to Adam, with instantly people laying flowers outside, some beautiful dedications. And we also seen over the course of those days, fans from right across the league, from other teams, put money together to get flowers and stuff arranged and send them down to Nottingham, either from local florists or a local fan that supports one of those teams, offering to call around on behalf of all of the fans and leaving floral tributes out. And it was a beautiful thing to see. But this didn't just happen. Obviously, in Nottingham, we seen that follow suit in Belfast here ourselves. We've seen fans going down to the Odyssey Arena and leaving outside the Odyssey Arena, and I think practically every single ice rink or arena right across the UK, we started seeing those floral tributes started being be put out, and books of condolences opening as well. Nottingham, obviously, on top of that, we know over the course of that week and stuff that it was a difficult one for Nottingham, as Nottingham fans came to terms with it, and no one would be hit harder than those Nottingham fans who support this team. And probably the only other people who maybe have an understanding of what happened that night would be the Sheffield fans who were in attendance in the Sheffield Arena when the incident took place. And obviously, it was obviously difficult for them, and everything that they were seeing on the ice that night. And the tributes have been just amazing. This is just one example. We've seen Nottingham then put on their tribute night. They held a memorial night in the arena itself the following Saturday, where they had books of condolences open on the ice. People come in. They had a moment's silence outside as well. A candlelit vigil. It's been phenomenal to see.
The images from the vigil were some of the most striking images, I think, through everything that we've seen over the last 2 weeks. I know from the video that was circulated of how it all went, the weather was horrendous. It was absolutely pouring with rain, and fans came out. They supported each other, the players, who I think, to be totally honest, nobody would have expected the players and the coaching staff to be anywhere near Bolero Square that day, but they were there. And you're right, the assistant coach, he spoke incredibly well, and I think a couple of people on a couple of different podcasts have said along these lines that was not a prepared speech. You could tell that was. These guys have come to pay their respects, and this was a speech that was given from the heart, and you could see what it meant to the fans in the square, but you could see what it meant to the people who belonged to the Panthers organisation, who were behind him and around him as well. He spoke incredibly well. It was very, very moving to see.
Yeah, definitely was. I mean, we will, obviously it's going to take a bit longer for Nottingham as a team to come back together. We'll talk about that at the end of our episode. Obviously, there's been some movement on that today, and we will talk about that at the end of our episode. But for the rest of the league, the majority of the league, bar the Steelers, this past weekend seen a return of games after having almost a week's hiatus of no games. Some games were cancelled following this. The full Sunday, we should say the full Sunday game, the full list of games that were supposed to take place the Sunday following this event were all postponed, and the games that were midweek were also postponed. So the teams kind of started to look to try and get back to a bit of normality for the fans from around the league the following weekend, and each team around the league had their own variations of tributes. Majority of the tributes were similar, the same place. I know myself and Dave attended the Belfast Giants game, and at the Belfast Giants game, before the game started, we had both coaches for the team come onto the ice and lay some wreaths while both teams stood around in a circle. Separate, not together, shall we say, not separate, not as separate teams, but together, forming a circle. The Giants, I know, had a minute's silence followed by a minute's noise, and the Giants also had a condolence book open on the day of the games. And I believe the majority of the teams that have done across the league who held very similar types of memorials and types of tributes. John, you mentioned you attended the Fife game, which was your local game. Pretty much the same kind of tribute going on there.
Yeah, it was exactly the same. So I understand that the moments that were taken before the games were exactly the same. They were agreed by the league and in the approach that they were going to take. So the laying of the wreaths, the moments, the minute's silence and the minute's applause were all led by the league, as well as the incredibly moving video that was shown, I believe, at every game over last weekend. Both the Saturday and the Sunday. Incredibly well respected and observed by, for me, the Fife and Glasgow fans. Both teams performed impeccably in how they showed the respect for Adam. And yeah, it gave that cathartic moment that I felt like I needed. And I said before that I'm not a Panthers fan. I didn't know Adam, but I'm a hockey fan. I'm an EIHL fan. And I felt like that was a moment. Look, I could have taken or left the game itself, to be totally honest. I was there as a neutral. But to stand with an arena full of fans, to be together after that, and to see how the league marked that moment, they did incredibly well.
Yeah, and I believe some fans as well in some games. I don't know, it didn't happen in the Belfast game, but it may have happened with you guys. I don't know in Fife, but I know some fans in some games across the league also then had a minute's round of applause around about the 47-minute mark as well, just to mark obviously Adam's number. So I know that did happen, and that was a fan-led thing as well. And I know the league did put out to say, our official tribute is this, but if fans want to do their own thing through the game, they're more than welcome to. And I believe a lot of fans did do that, and
yeah,
made some more noise and additional stuff.
I'll give them this: the Flyers drum corps or drum corner, and the clan drum that was brought into the rink for the game. They did that brilliantly. So it started with a sort of clap, and everyone standing, clapping. Even the players during a break and play before face-off joined in on the ice with the sort of a moment's applause, if you like, within that minute's play. And then it ended with a chant for Adam Johnson. So again, fans, the league performed impeccably, I think, through this, but the fans did as well. So yeah, well done to the fans around the league as well for how everyone has handled this.
Obviously, we don't want these events to happen, but obviously what we're seeing here is that, as you said, the fans coming together, the league coming together, showing a unity of strength. Even the image that we're seeing here at the moment, and Marty, you kind of hinted at it. it is the teams coming together. It's not one team on one side. It's not another team on the other side. There, it's a giant. It's a flame. It's one and then another player and another player mixed together. So they are together. They're showing unity. And it's a small symbol, but it's impactful.
And I think it was really it was. I think it was it was an image of what the fan. I think it was a very. What am I trying to say? It was basically it replicated, I suppose, what fans were feeling. If you know what I mean, like so, fans very much were, team colors they're obviously still going to be your team colors, but at that time, teams colors didn't didn't make it, they didn't play any big massive. They weren't as important because obviously this incident and this thing that happened, this tragedy that happened had just kind of taken over everybody, and everybody was feeling the same thing. So I think that was quite, that was something that was definitely replicated by the events then, that how this happened and the tribute that happened and how the teams came together in the way that they did. But it wasn't, as I mentioned, it wasn't just here in the Elite League. We seen across the pond that actually they were probably the first ones to do some tributes, because they had some games way before we returned to play. We had in Ontario Reign, who was which was one of Adam's old teams, former teams, I should say. They had this tribute where they skated out onto the center, ice, and they placed Adam's jersey out onto a seat in the middle of the ice, and each player then skated past and touched his shirt before skating back off again, which was, I think, a beautiful tribute from them.
I think the important part about this tribute was that he was named first star of the game, and the players who came out to tap the jersey were former teammates of his from the Reign. But the thing that I hadn't realised until I watched this video just a couple of days ago was that, forgive me if I get his first name wrong, but I think it's Jacob Doughty, who carries the jersey out to centre ice, is himself a former Panther. And he was the guy to bring the jersey out to centre ice. And like I say then, that the Reign players who came out were the former teammates of Adam themselves. That was hands down one of the most incredible early tributes to Adam that was given.
Yeah, I know. One of the other early tributes, just because you mentioned earlier tributes, one of the earlier tributes, and I think this is the first one that I had seen out of most of them, was around the Heritage, the classic, the Heritage game, the Heritage Classic game that took place. I think this was actually on this Sunday. So this was actually this was hours after the announcement was made, and the Heritage Classic took a moment's silence just before the Heritage Classic took place. I mean, this is a massive football field full of fans who all observed the minute silence. And if you watch this moment, and the clip is on X, or it's on the YouTube channel, it's everywhere, I guess. But if you watch this, just the sheer silence from such a massive crowd, even outdoors, this is probably the first one that was paid. And then I think the other one, then the first one that I'd seen after that, was probably the one from the Hershey Bears, which is kind of similar to what we'd seen here in Belfast, which was both teams standing around centre ice, unified. And again, this is just another symbol. And I think this is quite, just another symbol of teams from right across paying their tributes. And again, I think this was immediately, maybe not the night after, but maybe the Monday or so. But it's quite early on. And we've seen the tribute saying continue. We've seen obviously the Pittsburgh Penguins, which Adam Johnson played for, had the stickers for little decals on the side, little stickers on the side of their helmets as they played. And I did notice actually this past weekend I don't know if it was right, I'm guessing it was right across the Elite League, because both, I believe, the Belfast Giants, definitely the helmets for the Belfast Giants, I think, had a little small 47 on the back, little logo on the back of their helmets, I believe. If Dave was here, he could correct me, because I can't remember if it was. I'm nearly 100% sure it was the Giants, or I can't remember if it was Giants or it was Guildford. Anyway, potentially both. But they had little AJ 47 stickers on as well. And then the Penguins also then obviously having their own variation of a tribute, which for me, I just thought this image itself, when I first seen this image, it was stunning. Like this image, for some reason, really was breathtaking. I felt it was really, really captured me. And I don't know why
Yeah, I
this one more
think
than any of them, but it was definitely something that kind of like took me. It was just like, wow, that's stunning looking.
I think the Penguins organization set the bar for how to appropriately pre-game give thanks for the memory of Adam, because it's hard not to look at how the Elite League have then gone on to do things the following weekend, and I think it shows how incredibly powerful players from two opposing sides coming together before playing what is a fast, heavy hitting contact sport, how they can come together to remember someone who was one of their own. And that's exactly what we saw the following weekend. And for the Penguins to be amongst the first to do this sort of thing made it incredibly powerful. The fact that he was not just one of their own in the hockey community, but one of their own in the Pittsburgh community as well.
And we mentioned obviously Adam playing for the Pittsburgh Penguins, but we also mentioned that Adam also did play for the Augsburg Panthers as well. And they obviously played their own tribute too. Played in the number 27 there as well. And I know Pete Russell was the coach there as well, I think at the time,
He was.
if I was right. And there again, similar tribute. Teams on the ice and in the jersey in the center ice as well. But it's just, I wanted to really highlight and show the tributes that were paid right across the globe, because they were, so significant, and everyone from right around the world were doing it. The last one I wanted to mention, obviously, as well, was the Minnesota one. While he didn't play for Minnesota, Adam was from Minnesota, and the Minnesota Wild held a stick night where each player, they have a beautiful video. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a beautiful video of each of the Minnesota Wild players coming out and placing their hockey sticks out in front of the state of Minnesota flag and the two jerseys up, and it's just something that the video was put together really, really well. It's a really beautiful touching tribute, and again, it's just the home of Adam was obviously rightfully they did something, and I think it was done really well.
I know you went past the Penguins one when we had the image of the Penguin Stadium there. Whether we're going to be sharing the video later on as well, but the video that they put out, I thought was very emotional. It was one of the showing it was Adam's first game, coming out as number 47. The goal that he scored, his first NHL goal. It was a really nice, beautiful video.
No, yeah, you're right. And we'll probably, if we haven't shared it on our socials, I'm sure we will, but I'm sure most people have seen it now, because I think a lot of people have been using that goal and stuff, and his first goal and his first pro goal and stuff in the NHL, and that's been put out and things. So, but yeah, I agree with you, Aaron. It was a great video that's been put together, good quality piece. The tributes, they were the main tributes that happened on the ice, but the tributes didn't just stop there. I mean, John, I know there was other tributes that happened, jersey numbers and stuff. Do you want to touch on that? I know there was a couple there happening.
Yeah, so there's a couple. Glasgow Clan player has forgive me, I don't have the piece to hand to give you the name, but he has decided to change from the number 47 and leave it for Adam for this season. Similarly, referee James Irons, he will be moving away from the number 47 for the remainder of this season, at least, as a sign of respect for Adam. And separately as well, with the Flyers, one of their players, Kyle Osterberg, is a former teammate of Adam's. And rather than change his number this season or do anything, he's not currently playing in 47, but what he'll be doing with the blessing of the family is he will wear a number 47 Johnson warm-up shirt for the rest of the season to remember his former teammate. All of those sort of put together, I thought, were incredibly moving. The fact that everyone thought that was the right thing to do, and I think generally has been accepted. The Clan player, by the way, I want to give him his due as well, because I've been able to find it here, is Zach Vinnell has stepped away from number 47, and he'll wear a different number this season. But yeah, all three of them, and it was refreshing as well to see it come from the refereeing section as well.
Mm.
Those are guys who've had those numbers for a long time, and I think all of those guys who've made that decision, stick taps to them, because that's a classy move.
Yeah, definitely. The one other thing, the one last tribute I want to talk about before we move on from the tributes and talk about the aftermath, in terms of the decisions that have been made since then, is that also it did the tributes didn't just occur within the sport of ice hockey. We've seen tributes come in as well from local football as well, the local soccer. If you're not from the UK, but local football team, Nottingham Forest football club, they had a game. They had a game in the days following, and they held a moment silence as well. And actually, in the 47th minute, the fans obviously were chanting Adam Johnson's name. The screen came up with Adam's number. There was a flag put up with Johnson 47, and at the same time, the Force scored in the 47th minute. The scorer Mangala scored, and it just felt like it was an even bigger tribute the fact that he scored in that moment as well. And I know the Nottingham Panthers reached out to Nottingham Forest and thanked them for, I suppose, the efforts they put in to have to put in some form of memory for Adam at that local game. Obviously a lot of fans probably from the Panthers probably attend the Nottingham Forest games as well, so it's probably significant for them as well to be attending that. That's I guess I want to just move on. Like that's the majority of our that's the majority of the tributes, I would say. Is there anything you think I'm missing, guys? Is there any tributes that you seen I'm missing?
No, I think in combination, we've seen I think people have used the phrases hockey family and hockey community quite a lot over the last 2 weeks, but they ring true. We have seen the community, we've seen the teams, the leagues, we've seen them gather round each other and circle the wagons a little bit, to look after each other, and it's been heartwarming to see the swell of pride that you can feel as a fan of the sport here in the elite league, especially when you see how the vast majority have conducted themselves, has been fantastic to watch, and it makes you proud to be a hockey fan in the elite league.
Yeah. Definitely. Guys, I want to move on. So as I say, obviously we had these tributes, but obviously the incident itself and the accident that occurred on the ice that night obviously was a massive accident, a massive incident. And again, the one thing it was going to always do was it was always going to address, it was always going to bring up the level of player safety that should be in place at such a high impact professional level of a sport. There's players who maybe in the NHL, there's a few players who maybe throughout the career have used neck guards. We've seen some, we've seen other, and Aaron, you touched upon this earlier when you were mentioning about Evander Kane last year, but we have seen incidents happen before. Maybe definitely not to the level of what we've seen, unfortunately, with Adam, but I mean, the issues of neck guards has raised its head. There's been a lot of discussion right across all major leagues, all most professional leagues, around whether or not neck guards should be something that is made mandatory or not. We should mention that the Oxford City Stars, I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Oxford City Stars were the first team to come out and say that they would be ensuring that all of their players, in order to commit to enhancing player safety, that all players and all club members will be provided with a neck guard, and that basically they'll all be wearing them as a non-negotiable component of the attire, that from now on through practice and games they will have to wear a neck guard. Following that, quite soon after, the EIHA in general put an announcement that basically just stated that in the interim, the neck guards and neck guard protectors were strongly recommended. However, from January 1st, I believe,
Yep.
that they would be a mandatory they have to be mandatory included in all gear going onto the ice. And it didn't just stop there. We've seen the WHL over across the pond in North America put out a similar statement to say that they were going to announce a mandatory neck guard protection. And that was going to be effective from November 3rd. So they weren't waiting around. They're basically saying they were instigating it straight away as a mandatory mandatory thing that it would have to happen. Following WHL, we seen that the NHL had strongly recommended, and that Gary Bateman had made a statement to say that it is something that he wanted to put on the table for the general manager conversations meeting that they usually have around January time. So I think it is tabled for January to have a discussion around what is going to be mandatory, if it's going to be mandatory or not, or what the decision is going to be in relation to neck guards moving forward. And we've seen also the DEL as well, the Penny DEL sponsor, the Dell sponsored by Penny, I should say. They also put out a statement this week. If you can't speak German, I kind of sum it up for you. Basically, they put out a statement as well to say that it was going to be a mandatory thing as well within the Dell, that neck guards would be required for players who were playing on the teams. The Elite League itself also did put out a statement. And we should mention that the Elite League did put out a statement. And I do want to read the Elite League statement as well, just so that we are clear. The Elite League statement was as follows. Following the tragic accidents, following the tragic events that took place and ahead of the weekend's games, please find a statement from the Elite League. We are devastated by the loss of Adam's life, and our thoughts remain with the family, teammates, and everyone else affected during this time. Player safety and welfare is our top priority, and we work with players, officials, clubs, and relevant authorities to review research and advise to understand how we continually enhance the safety of our sport. All clubs continue to follow the existing guidance from the International Ice Hockey Federation that the use of a BNQ, which is a standard neck guard laceration protector, is recommended. And the Elite League strongly encourages players and officials to wear one, and clubs and the league will continue to support players and officials to do so. That came with mixed reviews. And I don't know if it's the right way to talk about, if we should be talking about, but I think it's worth to have a conversation about, because there's two train of thoughts and two avenues of conversations that are happening at the moment with the fans in relation to the neck guards. The Elite League obviously not taking a stance and not making it mandatory, obviously following the IIHF guidance in relation to it in this instance. This past weekend, I know whenever at the Giants game, I think we probably could count on one hand, maybe two hands maximum, maybe about half a dozen max players not wearing neck guards. And that's half a dozen for both teams combined. There's a few on the Giants, a few Giants players weren't playing, and a few of the Guildford Flames players weren't wearing them, but the majority wore. And one group of fans, one half of fans are saying that it should be a choice, especially at a pro level hockey level, that you should have a choice whether or not that you decide to wear your neck guard. And then we have the other camp who are basically saying, well, we've witnessed the event, we've seen what took place, and we know what happened, and we don't want any other fans sitting in those crowds to experience what we've experienced, and we feel that the best way to do so would be to introduce those mandatory neck guards so no other fan has to experience what we've experienced. Your thoughts, John?
I think it's a nuanced conversation. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer with this, and that in itself may be a controversial take on it. Wayne Gretzky had some interesting thoughts on it in what was an interestingly worded piece that he gave during a broadcast in the days following the accident. And he spoke very well about the way that hockey has changed and the way that the gear that the guys wear has changed. We, I think, are quick to forget that there was a period of time where goalies didn't wear masks, where players didn't wear helmets, where players didn't wear visors. And all of these changes have come, but they've come at their own pace. We've never seen an incident with the results that we've seen, unfortunately, with Adam in this sort of way. There is a groundswell of movement, and let's be totally honest, towards the mandatory uptake of the neck guards. And I believe that wrist guards are being included in this conversation as well, Aaron, you mentioned it earlier about the Patrick Kane accident last year. So these conversations are being had. The commissioner in the NHL is obviously looking at it as well. But players across countless leagues have been voting with their actions. And that includes in the NHL. One of the most stark conversations I had about this was with TJ Oshie. He put on a net guard and the media were straight in and asked him, "What are you doing?" And he was very, very simple in what he said. And he said he was doing it for his kids. He was wearing a net guard because he wanted to be around for his kids. And I think this is part of the conversation. It may never happen again. But if you weren't to take the step to stop it, and it did, what would the questions then be? And a lot of people have talked about the fact that net guards and wrist guards, the technology behind them, if you like, or just the design of them generally hasn't changed. It hasn't changed because pros haven't been wearing them. Everything else that the pros wear, from their helmet down to their skate blades, everything changes and is upgraded over time as things move on, as pros ask more and more of their gear. The same will come of this protective gear. The same will come of neck guards, where they'll be built into the rest of the gear that these guys are wearing, to the point that no one ever questions, why are we wearing it again? So innovation will come, and it will be driven by the fact that these pros are wearing it. And you're absolutely right about the first games back this weekend, Marty. I can say between the Flyers and the Clan, I think I could only spot 2 players who were not wearing neck guards. So there is a conversation coming, and I think we know what way it'll land on, because more and more professional leagues are landing on the mandatory use of it, and it's been led through, sadly, an incident that we wish had never happened.
Aaron, your thoughts? Is you have anything else in terms of?
John, honestly, just it was like he was in my head. I was going to talk about Wayne Gretzky's comments. I know you didn't talk about that, John, but I didn't realize. I should have realized, but in Canada, when in youth hockey, like they're mandatory, like they have to wear them.
Here.
It's the same here. So
most countries, between anything considered a junior, whether it's under 16 or 18, the neck guard is an absolute requirement.
Yeah. So, and I think his comment was, "Why take them off? You know, we're protecting ourselves at that point. Why take them off?" So, and then, as you said, the players are kind of voting with their actions. They're wearing them anyway. So
I seen an interesting comment today, and I don't know. I apologize if I'm stealing your comment. And I don't know who it was, and I do apologize. I seen it on Twitter, and I agreed, because I'm also a fan of. If you can't see behind me on this side here, there's a F1 Formula One car, Lego car here, and it's like someone likened it to the idea of Formula One. Formula One introduced a halo to the front of the car, and each car had to have a mandatory halo added to the front in order to protect the driver inside, following I suppose a potentially a crash that could have saved someone's life. And we had big names within the F1 world who, at the time, Lewis Hamilton was one of them. At the time, was like really against the introduction of these halos. Said that they didn't understand why they were needed and why they were necessary. And then we had an incident about 2 years ago now, where a car landed on top of Lewis Hamilton's car. Max Verstappen's car landed on top of Lewis Hamilton's car, and Lewis was protected because when Max landed on that car, his car landed on top of that halo and ensured that Lewis wasn't touched. And Lewis came out of that accident, and he said, "You know what? Hands up. I was one of the people who said I wasn't for it, and it just saved my life." And I kind of agreed with the person on Twitter today when I read it, about, they were saying it's like that, in that it would be one of those ones where the change will be made and people will grumble and worry and complain about it. But at the end of the day, and God forbid, touch wood, if there's wood around, I don't know if it's real wood, it doesn't happen again. But if it did, and a neck guard saves a person's life, people will go, "You know what? Yeah,
Yep.
we should have been doing it, and look, it's going to be a conversation that's going to go on, and I'm sure when we get back into our regular podcasting, the rest of this year, I'm sure this story is going to be a story that we're going to pick up again and again throughout the rest of the course of this season, and potentially into next season as things start to unfold, and when we go into the next season, we know ourselves that like the likes of the NHL, where discussions will be had in January with the GMs, and that maybe won't take place until the following season, so. I'm sure we'll be discussing this again come one of our
And
future
the same will go
shows.
for the double IHF as well. I'm sure it'll be tabled for the a future meeting of the double IHF, at which point you may see the official stance of the Elite League change at that point.
Yeah, guys, look, I'm going to finish off this episode just with two little bits I just wanted to talk about. We talked about how the majority of the league returned to action this past weekend. So the eight of the 10 teams played this past weekend. However, the Nottingham Panthers and the Sheffield Steelers weren't, I suppose, in the right place or the right mindset, and I think they were, and still rightly so. They're playing it by how the players are feeling. And they've made it very clear that they're not going to push any player to play if they don't feel that they're comfortable or ready to do so. And I think that is a massive, massive thing for them. And I think it's the right move and the right idea. The Sheffield Steelers have announced, though, that they will be returning to action this coming Sunday at home. And they have put out a bit of a plea, but not a plea. They've put out a bit of a request and a bit of a shout out for a bit of help. They have basically just put out a statement that says the club will return to home ice for the first time since the tragic accident that took place on the 28th of October. We'll be facing off against the Coventry Blaze. We've never needed you more, Sheffield. I think they're looking for people to come along and obviously, return and help support, the players to return to the ice, help the fans who were there on the night and kind of create something for them. And I know on the night, for anybody who needs it, the NHS Blue Line, I think is what they're called in the UK, slightly different here in Northern Ireland. It's mental health support services within the NHS, I think, will be on hand in the arena to help and speak to anybody who does feel that they need it on the night. They have also said that they'll open it up so that if fans feel overwhelmed by the experience when they return to the arena, that they are free to leave at any time, but also come back in at any point. And they're going to make some spaces as well, some spaces within the arena that people can go off if they're feeling a bit overwhelmed and just need a bit of time away. So I think they're doing all the right things and the right steps, and they're doing it in slow pieces, and I think that's the right thing to do. And we hope for all fans who do return to the arena that they do seek out the support if they feel they do need it. Lastly, before we sign off for this week, the other thing that I just want to talk about was the Nottingham Panthers themselves. Without a doubt, it has been tough for the Nottingham Panthers. It was their own player that passed away. Those players who played with him on that ice are probably still trying to come to terms with what's going on. We've seen this week Nottingham Panthers, both the coach and assistant coach. We've seen Pash and assistant coach Kevin at the memorial in Minnesota, which took place, I think, 3 days ago or 2 days ago. Both spoke really well. Some really beautiful words said. So if you haven't seen that video, go and have a look and see and watch that. It's available still on YouTube, and it is beautiful words that were said, not just from them but from everyone who was in attendance and spoke about Adam. It was a really great tribute. But the Nottingham Panthers this week announced that they would be pulling out of the Challenge Cup, that they would be able to fulfill those fixtures. And I think they're just thinking about the players' own welfare and the players' mental health. And I think just having those extra games probably just weren't right at this time. But what they did announce today was that the Panthers, will be hosting a memorial game in honor of Adam, and that will take place on Saturday the 18th of November at 7 p.m. and the Panthers will take on the Manchester Storm. The details will come out before that. The game will be priced at £10 per ticket. Further information around that and around about the fundraising initiatives that will be taking place we will talk about the fundraising in a minute. John, I'll pass on to you for the fundraising in a minute. But they will be talking about different initiatives that will be taking place on that night in order to pay tribute as well in relation to raising more funds. I think this is right. And I think what Pash came out and said, and the head coach came out and said, was basically just that, we're going to play it day by day. If players feel that they want to take part, they can. If players still don't feel that feel that they're ready for it, that's okay also. And I think it's just trying to get them, in the right mindset, in their own time, when they're ready. And again, I think this is the right thing to do. The one thing I would say, and I have to give a wee shout out, I do have to mention just about Manchester Storm. I think it's a great choice of team that they've chose for this Memorial game. And the only reason why I'm saying that is I think out of majority of teams, while all teams have done their bits and paid their tributes, Manchester particularly, I felt this week were very much at the forefront of the support that they were given. They reached out to away fans whenever they heard that Sheffield fans and Nottingham fans wanted to come to their game this previous weekend, because they were having obviously their version of their tribute. And obviously Manchester probably the closest team to some of those for those two teams. They were just like, you know what, just you come along, we're going to look after you. Don't worry about where you're sitting. Don't have to worry about booking seats within visitor sections. You pick a seat wherever you want to sit, and you're very much welcome. And even the way the Belfast Giants also put out a little thing on the Sunday, because the Giants were there playing on Sunday, and the Belfast Giants put out a thank you to the Manchester Storm as well, because the Manchester Storm put out a little touch as well for the players who arrived, like a little I think it was maybe the Manchester Storm fan supporter, the official supporters club potentially, or someone in relation to it, left like cooked baked treats and stuff, little like boxes of like comfort boxes for the team, which the Giants put out to say thank you very much. That was very well thought of, and it was a very nice thought and gesture. So little things like that, and I think that Manchester were the right team to take part in this tribute. John, just as I mentioned, obviously there is an ongoing fundraiser for Adam. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I can. So I think I mentioned in the podcast before this all happened that I was going to be doing Movember, and I made the decision as soon as everything happened that rather than raise through the usual Movember channels, I would instead ask for donations to the official fundraiser. So the Nottingham Panthers are raising money with the blessing of Adam's family for the Love for Hibbing and Hockey Memorial Fund, which is a community fund which will be used in Adam's memory for local charitable activities in the Hibbing area, and they will be selected by the Johnson family going forward. So far, the fundraiser has just ticked over the £70,000 mark. £78,500 has been raised already. There have been lots of different avenues for people to donate money for this cause. There have been a variety of merchandise items, memorial merchandise items, which have been put out, and we had a chat in our own group chat earlier in the week when the Panthers announced the memorial jersey. I jumped on it, actually, to be totally honest. I am not a Panthers fan. I will never be a Panthers fan. But what I will do is remember Adam. And when it arrives, however long it takes, because I'm not one of the people complaining about delivery times, it will hang behind me here for at least the rest of this season, if not longer, so that I can always remember Adam. But if you can, or if you haven't already, and you have the financial capability to, we would say go and give a couple of pounds to this memorial, because it will do a lot of good in Adam's hometown and in his community.
Yep, well said. Guys, that's it. As I mentioned in our intro, this was just kind of like a special standalone edition that we wanted to do. As I mentioned, our usual podcast is a bit more jovial, a bit more topical, shall we say. We pick some really random stories, and so that's why we just felt that it wasn't right just to add this in as just a story within that. So we felt this was the right thing to do, and hopefully we did it justice. We've done our part, and hopefully 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 everybody is I think hopefully, as I say, we've done justice, and it made sense what we've done anyway for this podcast. That's really it. All I have to say really is just for us to sign it off for this week. I will just mention, obviously, not to promote the podcast because it's not what we want to do. But if you are watching this on our YouTube channel, as I say, we will add the once we come off live and once we switch it over, I'll make sure to put the helpline numbers and stuff in the description box just underneath the YouTube video. And if you are listening to this regularly, as you would do on one of the podcast providers of choice, I will also make sure we add on the helpline numbers into the description for the podcast, so that if you do feel that you want to reach out and get any kind of support, that you know the numbers are there and handy to get. Guys, that's it for this week. So without further ado, I'm Marty.
I'm John.
All right.
Have a great week.